UCPN special only on Undercover Capes. Hey everybody, it's Al Mega Baby, and I'm here with a new show, a UCPN special, with, I'm very happy to bring back one of our first interviewees, if you will, Mr. Dave Elliott. And I also have one of our fellow Comic Crusaders that has one of the most interesting comic book Twitter feeds in the Twitterverse. I'm talking about none other than Chris Buse.
Hi, how are you tonight, guys?
Yo. So, guys, thanks for coming on. I want to get into this quick, but I want to get into this real quick because I really want to get into the comic conversation with you guys, because when Dave got added onto your comic book conversations on Twitter, it added even another level of education. This is Comic Books 101, 102, up the way to 505. This is great stuff, folks. If you guys are not reading, you're missing it. Please follow Chris Buse on Twitter as well as Dave Elliott. You won't regret it. Now, let's get started with a little bit about Chris and how I met him. Now, Chris has a very interesting Twitter feed, and he shares a lot of comic book history. But from his perspective, of course, a lot of German books, and you see books from all over Europe, and obviously with the American versions and stories about the creators and who did what, this, that, the other. Chris has been absolutely amazing. And, got me very interested. I hit him up on a DM, and next thing you know, he's part of the Comic Crusaders team, which I'm very happy about. But now I have the chance to ask him officially, Chris, why did you start doing that type of style Twitter feed? What inspired you to do that?
Well, let's say I'm probably the oldest here in the room. I'm 52 years old, and I run a company, consulting business, and my own company. And my team is very young, and they turned me onto Twitter and said, well, take care of our Twitter feed. I said, okay, how do I do that? How does Twitter work? And then they showed me, and I said, okay, I can do my own Twitter thing. And what do I like to tweet about? Well, that's comics. I've been a comic fan for nearly my entire life. And I said, okay, but when I want to post about comics, I want to make it interesting. I want to tell stories with the stories. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started in June, my Twitter feed. And I tried to build my tweets as a story, to educate people, to turn them onto certain things, to be very positive about things, try to keep politics out the door a little bit as far as possible, and show maybe younger readers how great older comic books were, and to give them a new appreciation for the medium. That's basically it.
And I think you've been doing a wonderful job at that. Let me tell you, just reading through the comments of folks and the responses. I mean, that list keeps getting bigger and bigger that you keep adding folks. Soon you won't be able to write anything.
That's true. Yeah. El was so kind to DM me, as you said, and asked me to write for the wonderful Comic Crusader site. And so far I have only locked down 2 columns because we are also heavily involved with working. And I have a crazy schedule, but I really want to write more, and I will write more. And people seem to be enjoying my columns, so I feel very encouraged. And I would like to thank El for the opportunity.
No, it's because you're awesome, man. God put you in front of me to see, and we linked up, and that was great. Now, my one other question before we move on to Dave is: you said you got started early in life in comics. What was your first exposure? What was your first book that you said, "This is it"? I love it, and I'm going to do this forever.
That would have been Fantastic Four number 8. I was probably around 5 or 6, and there was a neighborhood boy who was a couple of years older, and he showed me that stuff and said, "Look here, that's interesting." I said, "Wow, that's really cool." And I'm not sure if I was able to read it or if he told me what this was all about, but this was my first comic book. And I've been loving Kirby and Lee, Fantastic Four, ever since, and comics in general.
Nice. So Marvel was obviously your start. What was your first foray into DC or any other brands? Was it DC or was it something else?
No, it was the first showcase was the 22, with Green
nice.
Lantern, the first one.
Oh man, because, you got put out the good stuff.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is in the 70s, in Germany, they published the Marvel books of the 60s, and they also, the same publishing company that had the rights for Marvel, also had the rights for 2 or 3 DC books, and they could put out Green Lantern, and so we read Fantastic Four, excuse me, the Kirby run, basically from the first issues on in the early 70s, and the showcase books, which were a little bit older, which we didn't know, basically at the same time, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But that was my start into comics.
Yeah, amazing. Dave, you have any questions for the guy here? Because, you're a UK guy, and this is a gentleman all the way from Germany.
Oh, no, I mean, I said this on Twitter when I think it was, Doctor Strange who brought us.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yes, it was. I remember that conversation.
Yeah, and the thing was, it was getting involved in that. And when Chris started tagging me, pulling me into those conversations, it really, and I said this to Chris on Twitter, but there was, it really reignited my love for old comics. I mean, just in a very short space of time. I mean, this is stuff that I'd put behind me. I hadn't read any of those stories for years and years and years. I don't read much anymore, and so because nothing really is being produced that I want to really read now.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been putting more and more like the reading of comics to one side. I've been cutting out my trips to the comic book store.
Yeah.
But Chris's conversations, it's like I want to go back to the comic store. My brother just dropped over a couple of old long boxes of comics, of old comics of mine.
Nice.
That he'd had because when I went to England, and it was just, and he just goes, "Oh, I thought you might want these." I was like, "Yes," because they're all like 20, 30 years old.
Oh wow, nice.
So what's so amazing is how extremely well these old stories hold up. If you look at the Jim Starlin run on Warlock, I mean, this is current stuff. I mean, it's old. It's from the 70s, mid-70s, but it feels very much like written today, and that is a testament how good these writers were and how good these artists were.
Oh, absolutely, man. When you could stand the test of time like that and transcend generations and make it seem viable and as fresh as it was on day one, I mean, that in itself is an achievement and a half.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's, I mean, I think that was the beauty of, like, you can go back, like, if I get a trade of Jim Starlin's Warlocks stories and his Captain Marvel stories, I don't need to try and place what every character in the Marvel universe was doing at that time. I just need to read those books, and that's got everything I need in it, and I can enjoy it without. I can enjoy it. Like, you can go back, you can read that, and not have to worry about what else was going on in the Marvel universe at this time. What was this affecting this? It was just, you can reread that. And I could give Captain Marvel and Warlock to someone who's not familiar with the Marvel universe at all, and they would still get it. They would still probably come away with going like, "Wow, this is amazing." Was all comics like this at the time? And you have to say no.
Yeah, you can say yeah.
But there's gems. There's Infinity Stones, if you like. There's gems.
Yeah.
But let me ask you. Do you're talking about Starlin's work now? Are you familiar with his story with Marvel? How he definitely had a story outline for it, but they're not really allowing him to do his story. They try to do the graphics, but then it's delayed. That. How do you feel about that? Because I mean, this whole story that Starlin has built from day one is amazing, and for them not to allow him to at least finish it his way. I mean, it's Marvel. You could say it was Universe 615 for all you care,
Yeah, but it just isn't. It's not like that anymore.
It sucks, right?
I mean, it's just so corporate led
Yes.
There's pockets of creativity. It's, the creativity you see at Marvel, and pretty much the same with DC, is there's these little pockets that you see something be really cool, this breakout book, and it's amazing, it's really cool, and it takes off because it's cool and everyone loves it, and then Disney goes, hey, let's make that our next movie, and all of a sudden you've got to stop where you are. You've got to start spinning that wheel now, because you might have had a direction where it was going, but Disney wants you to keep it just right there, because we're going to do a movie and we want to keep it now. It's got to stay there. You can't you can't move on.
So what are your overall feelings of how Hollywood treats comic books, in that sense? I mean, do you appreciate them changing the history so much of characters, or would you have liked them to keep it as it was in the books? Do you appreciate the changes? Yes, no?
Well, if you ask me, it's basically, I don't mind when they change things, because I see the movies as a parallel universe, and that's the way I can enjoy them.
Me
I don't
too.
say, well, it needs to be exactly one on one. That makes no sense. It's a different medium. Mm-hmm. But what I don't like is if you recall the discussion we had with Josh Trank and the ill-fated Fantastic Four reboot he did. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he said, well, let's forget all that was there before. Let me do my thing. And I find this incredibly arrogant. There's this rich history. If you adapt a novel, you don't say, well, this book is kind of interesting, but let's throw it away and just keep the title. That's something only Alfred Hitchcock could do, because he was a genius. But if you were like a movie maker, movie director who has 2 or 3 movies under his or her belt, well, basically don't be so arrogant and basically say, oh, there's so much history. I need to understand this history first before I can discard it. And then you will fall in love with it. And then you will build on that. And not say, well, let's make the Fantastic Four grounded, because that's what the book needs. That's idiotic. So I think some people get it, and some people don't get it. I would say Marvel does a good job overall. I really enjoyed Infinity War, and I've enjoyed the Cap movies a lot. And I think Kevin Feige has a good sense of where he's going with these. Is it perfect? No, nothing is perfect. But it's enjoyable, and it's its own story.
Winter Soldier was almost perfect.
I was just going to say that. See, the reason for the Marvel movies being so successful, I think you can put down to 2 things. Kevin Feige, because he came through this. He was a comic fan, so he came at it. He knew these characters and he loved them. But you've also got to thank, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, and Steve Ditko, because it gave them such good material.
Absolutely.
And so I think they've done a pretty good job of distilling the essence for the characters, with everything except Guardians of the Galaxy, really.
I hate those movies.
Well, the thing about Guardians of the Galaxy to me is, I disagree. I actually really enjoyed them. I mean, I loved, I thought they were both very funny, hilarious, but it wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy.
Let me interject just for 1 sec, because he says he hates them both, and I'm going to say something that pisses people off all the time. I enjoyed part 2 more than I did 1.
Oh, interesting. I hate part 2 with a vengeance, and that has a lot to do with the fact that they take some very serious topics and then turn them into a joke. They touch on abuse topics, and I'm very sensitive on those topics, and I don't think you can turn them into a joke. Gotcha. And, no, I didn't like them.
And there you go, folks. Chris making it very clear.
That's me. Right. Come at me.
I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No. As I said, so I think generally the movies have been very enjoyable, and it's funny. I noticed. I think it was about a year ago. There was the music in the Marvel movies, there's nothing standout. There's no like Star Wars theme that you could find yourself humming, or like the Superman movie, like the original John Williams Superman movie. I still hear that in my head. The Marvel movie, the Marvel soundtracks, I don't think I could. I mean, obviously, I recognize it when I hear it, and they do a very good job of that. But I couldn't hum any of it, because right now I'm trying to think of it right now, and there's nothing that I can hum. And
thank you for clarifying, because when it comes to the soundtracks, I was about to say the Luke Cage from Netflix Marvel soundtrack. Now, I don't know if you're into hip hop and soul. That was a fantastic soundtrack. My God.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think it has to do with Ike Perlmutter keeping them on budget, and I think he didn't want to spend any money on the music or the score. And now that they broke free from his...
I think when it comes to the movies, I don't think that's it. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to unify it all, so that Captain America, it's like when you watch Star Wars and everyone had a theme, but it was all within itself.
Yeah.
And I kind of wished that Marvel had done that. I wished that, like, when you're watching the Avengers and everyone's in trouble, and you're kind of like, how are they going to get out of this? And then you hear the sort of first notes of, say, Thor's theme, and he's not in the scene. He hasn't been in the scene set, and then you hear the first notes, and you know that Thor's coming to save them.
That's kind of the only thing that or not the only thing, one of the few things the extended DC universe did right, because the Wonder Woman theme is really awesome. Also the Superman theme is awesome. You can immediately identify the heroes when you just hear those scores.
Exactly. And that's what I miss from the Marvel Universe. But I also understand that what they're trying to do is it's really what they're saying is this is all one thing. Nothing.
Now you got me stuck with the damn Burton Batman theme, the Michael Keaton in my head.
Wow,
that was one of my faves.
Wow.
Yeah, see Danny Elfman, you had Danny Elfman do one, John Williams was doing the other, and they were unique. And now you have one person. I think it's Alan Silvestri is doing all the music for the Marvel movies, and it's all good music, but it's not. And I think it's deliberate. I think they really set out to, it's like, nope, this is all one big thing. That's what it is. No one gets their own theme.
Yeah. So we're talking about themes and all this stuff, right? I asked Chris all these questions, and then we skipped over you and asked you the question, and we just got straight into conversation. So, Dave, based on your projects, who would you like to do your theme music? I mean, what's going on in the world of Dave Elliott?
Oh, several things.
All right, what's the okay? So let's clarify this. What's the next thing we're going to see from you? Are there any new projects we're going to see in the next coming months from you?
Yes. There's actually a Kickstarter being launched in 2 weeks.
Oh shit! Say word. How dare you not tell me even a month before?
Well, I figured hey, well, to be honest, we've literally it was going to launch last week, and we pushed it back a little bit, and it's
don't wait, man. We're here for you, Dave, man. Send me all the info you got. We'll make sure to help you.
Oh, I will. I don't believe me. When we launch this, everyone will know. But this is a project where it's not my project per se, but I'm kind of packaging it. So under sort of Atomic Art, we're packaging the whole project, and so it's I'm the editor, packager, art director. I wrote the script based off a screenplay that the project is being based off, and I hope this is going to be the start of a series of special books that I'm going to be doing. That are, once I've got this first project done, I've got several of my own projects coming, and it's kind of plays into something that I've thought a lot about as far as what I feel comics need, and so it's a line it's the project. This particular project is called The Girl with No Name,
Okay.
And Tula Lotay has done 2 covers for it.
Whoa! Exactly.
Excellent.
Oh my God.
And there's there's a Greek artist called Danny Strips who's doing the interiors.
Okay.
It's being colored by a very good colorist I know in Indonesia called Gloria Cayley.
Okay.
It's being lettered by Annie Parkhouse, who's lettered like 2000 AD, Marvel books, DC books, Marvel Man.
Wepa.
So, but if notice, it's pretty much it's an all-female team because it's a girl with no name. So we'll put this together, but it's a Western, and I'm working with a
Western. Holy shit!
Yep.
Can't wait.
Interesting.
Oh, it's I'll as you know. Well, I'll do it later on tonight. I'll tag you both, and I'll send you a couple.
Excellent. Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm working with a company called Legion M. That is a.
Oh no way! I just spoke to Jeff Anderson about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so very familiar. That's great. So what's going on? You and Legion M? No way. That's big news. All right.
Well, this is their first comic book project.
Nice. And it's with my boy Dave. Oh, I'm excited.
There you go.
Excellent.
I even feel really good. But what? See, originally it's funny. They originally came to me because I've worked with other people that worked with Legion M before, doing books and graphic novels. And so they came to me and was like, "Hey, look, we've got this great project. We think it's really cool. We'd like to do this graphic novel." And I looked at it and said, "Well, why the graphic novel?" And they're like, "Well, we want to get it out there." And I'm going like, "Yeah, but why a graphic novel? Like, why don't you just do a single comic, a good comic? Like, because you get into that. See, it was." One of my big peeves, and I it's the thing the link I sent you guys earlier, which was I about a year and a half ago, I was kind of seeing the way the comics industry was going. I sent both Marvel and DC a proposal for a suggestion, very polite suggestion of how they could reformat their comics, change their publishing lineup to bring back lapsed readers, to not piss off the current readership, and create a couple of new formats that wouldn't be out of place. I've really genuinely felt it would pull in some lapsed readers, build readership, build sales in a way that the corporate entities that they belong to would be able to manage. Like it's not exactly the way I think that the industry can be saved, and I do think it needs to be saved. But it was it boils
when
down.
You say that, I'm sorry. When you say the industry needs to be saved,
yeah.
Where's the hole?
You hold on to that thought, and we'll come back to that because
you know me, bro. I'm sorry. I just gotta jump on things. I be biting on stuff.
Oh yeah. No, and we will.
Okay, great.
And even if we have to come back next week, we'll do that.
No problem.
And Chris's voice will probably be much better by then.
Yeah, sorry.
No. He sounds great though, man. A German Barry White. It's a rap, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you need to put a little reverb every time he talks. So
yeah, next time they will think they have another guest here on, because my voice will sound totally different.
Yeah. But it was stemmed from I want to be able to pick up a comic and read it and know what it's about and not have to buy another issue. Like, I don't have to buy the next issue. I get it. I get this story, and it's like, and there's enough in it that goes, if it's really good, I might want to buy the next issue, but I don't want to have to read the next issue just to find out what happens next. It's if it's that good a story, I want to read another story.
So you're a one and done man when it comes to your storytelling. ways in comic books. So you like the old school style, the one and done stories in an issue, or if they're going to do an event, it's always just within the title at the very least.
It's within the title, and it's, I don't mind a mini, 4 or 5 issue arc, fine, but don't bring every other title into it. Don't cross over. So I'd come up with this idea for a line of books I've been developing, and it's using the A1 brand that I have, but they're going to be called A1 Shot, and it's a one shot. It's every book we do it's a one shot. But it doesn't mean that if it's popular, we won't do another one. But if we do a second one, it's going to be a one shot again. It's got to be a self-contained issue.
Basically, I know exactly what you're going for, because in the 70s, DC did the first issue special. And that first issue special introduced Warlord, the Green Team, Manhunter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Starman was all introduced in that series. And if you like the series, it may continue.
Yeah, they tried bringing back the New Gods in that.
Yeah, and New Gods as well. Absolutely. Yes, the return of the New Gods. That was the last issue of that first issue special.
Yeah. So it's
I love that.
So it's that idea that you can have a comic book and it's that I wanted to treat it the same way as it's obviously it's a one shot, so it's a much smaller thing, but I would often tell people, and I talk to some executives I've met, and I talk about wanting to treat things the same way that Scholastic and J.K. Rowling treated Harry Potter, for instance. Like, if you know that if Harry Potter was owned by Warner Brothers or Disney, there would probably have been 50 Harry Potter novels by now. There'd have been 30 Hermione Granger books. There'd have been 20 Ron Weasley books, 20 Dumbledore books.
They would have milked the crap out of it.
And we'd all have Harry Potter fatigue, and Harry Potter would eventually fade out, or they would just keep forcing it upon us. But it would be hiring cheaper writers because the books weren't selling so much, so they couldn't pay so much. And hey, time to reboot Harry Potter.
Yeah. Oh, it's in Marvel? I didn't know.
Yeah. So it's that mentality. So it's going to be a one shot, and I'm hoping to do at least 3 one shots this year, and slowly build it up. I'm working with several different creators on some projects.
Any creators we know, or these up and comers?
Well, hopefully, people like Dave Wilkins, Alex Hawley.
Oh, word! I know Alex. Nice. Okay, I've seen him a lot on the Northeast.
Yeah.
Talking about Northeast, when is Dave Elliott coming to the Northeast cons, like Rhode Island Comic Con or Comic Con in Connecticut or Terrific Con? Do you do any of these shows out here?
I haven't, but I know I should. If once this line gets going, you see, because we're going to launch each one via Kickstarter. Yeah. So I'll be going to more conventions because to me, it's, connecting with the fans. So
absolutely. Please let me know when you're ready for that, Dave. I know a lot of showrunners, at least in the Northeast area. And I would love to connect you so that way we could go ahead and have a brew or a beer, or I don't know what you guys call it out there. Go to the pub.
Yeah, absolutely. No, at all. And again, what we're kind of, the idea is to sidestep Diamond.
It looks like that's the avenue that all independent creators or independent publishers trying to do. I mean, I recently spoke to Bill Richardson, and he used to be editor over at First Comics, giving me a lot of great ideas and how to utilize my own channel to actually distribute books. And the ideas he gave me were gold. I mean, gold. I can't wait to talk to him again, Chris knows I'm on this entrepreneurial thing right now. Like,
yes.
I really read a lot, and I'm trying to absorb as much as I can because the better I am, then the better I am for the team, the better I am for the label, and then we're going to be able to go from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, we like the Kickstarters, whether it's directly through the Kickstarter or it's through our website, retailers will be able to buy them directly from us, but we won't be going to Diamond.
So what type can you let us know like what type of rate is there a good rate difference that retailers will have an advantage on versus ordering from Diamond from what your plan is, or is not there yet? Plan
basically what I'm planning on is whenever I've sold anything to a retailer directly, I give them 50% off.
Woo! Not 50. Woo! Woo! That's fire right there.
So it's I'm not going to it's none of this 30% rubbish.
It's not even 30% because if you listen to Peter Samedi from Alton, it's like he gets really raped. They almost get nothing on the dollar, on the value. It's so sad. I feel bad for the guy when he starts talking about those averages. It's insane. It's like, how can these creators survive?
Well, that's there's so many different conversations we could be having. Like if you talk about when you say how can comic creators survive, it's like, well, how many comic creators? We look out and we know we can all ream off our favorite comic creators, but the other comic creators, the ones who are doing the majority of the books, they're struggling. They're having, God forbid they should get ill. God forbid they should need to go to the dentist. And God forbid they should be kicked off a book because all of a sudden, they're living paycheck to paycheck. Or they're working another job. They're basically drawing their comics at night. They're trying to make ends meet. And you look, it's like comic page rates for creators haven't gone up in probably 20 years. Because comics don't sell very well anymore. If, for instance, I think both Marvel and DC have around about don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 60,000 you have to sell before you start getting royalties. There's not many comics that sell that. So you're not going to get, sure, Batman and Superman and Justice League may get it, and Spider-Man and Avengers. But the average comic book is struggling to get 5,000 or 10,000. So they're not getting any royalties. They don't get reprint rates. Am I the only one here? Hello?
No. We are listening.
Oh.
You know a lot about this stuff.
It was definitely quiet. I'm going like, I've turned everybody off.
No. You have so much inside information which I don't have, and I'm always interested in that. That's why we work as a team on Twitter, I realized.
Right. Well, let's just say, like, let's talk openly. Like, I know that if I'm an artist and I'm showing my portfolio, and I've done a couple of image titles that have sold very well, and my art's very good, and I go to Marvel, and Marvel will start me off at a fairly low page rate, and they're quite brazen, actually. They will quite openly tell you that, well, we're going to start you off at this low rate because we know that by you drawing a Marvel book, you will be able to sell your originals for more money. We know that when you go to a comic convention, you will be able to get more money for doing a commission. If you're doing an X-Men book, say, now you can legitimately be drawing Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey sketches and sell them for $150, whereas previously maybe your sketches were only $50.
You're not lying on that, man. I've gone to cons. I'll call them out because I really, it's okay to do that because they do it, right? Jay Lee, for example, if you go up to his table at a convention, even if it's just a signature, everything is $5 from the get.
Jeez.
Period. But then you have a Matthew Rosenberg that he'll give you, I believe, like 4 or 5 free cigs. But if it's above that, then I guess he knows what's going on, and then he'll charge you. A dude like Bendis doesn't really charge. Steranko charges because he knows what people are up to, and that's just the shameful part of the speculator market.
Well, I think, look, I think all those people are justified in what they've done. I think that in what they decide to go on, Bendis, for instance, he's a writer, so he's not going to do you a sketch.
Yeah.
So he's and he knows, and he also knows he makes enough money. He doesn't need to charge for his signatures, and he knows he's got a fan base, and he keeps that fan base happy by signing whatever they want, as long as they don't take the Mickey. But it's.
So you think there's a big difference between writer and artist then when it comes to the signature standpoint?
Well, yeah, because usually people come up and they're really what they want is like sketches. Like it's like, oh, give me, just a head. And they just go, just a head. And it's like, well, I can do a head, but you might not like it.
Yeah.
It's what they're trying to do is they're trying to get as much as possible for as little or nothing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I get that. I mean, I have a lot of creative friends like Joe St. Pierre, Ian Nichols, Hannibal King, Chris Campana, all these cool guys that work in Ultra Reality, independent label out here that also does conventions, right? You got to see the stuff they get asked for, but they don't break the bank. But then you get a dude like Humberto Ramos or Rob Liefeld. Oh my God, dude, the prices for pieces. I mean, as a fan, yeah, if you're a real fan, you're going to take the hit. But sometimes, like, wow. How do you feel about that, though, Dave? You're a creator. How do you feel about charging fans for a signature or a piece of art? I mean, do you want to keep it fair? If you, for art, I understand. But from a writer's perspective, will you charge them?
No, as a writer, I would never charge. It's like, my signature, absolutely.
What about as an artist? And if so, what do you think is a fair price to charge someone that may actually appreciate the art?
Well, I think that look, artists. The thing that people don't talk about at all is everyone seems to talk about just the immediate moment in time. Someone comes back from a convention. Someone was charging too much for a sketch. Everyone's upset and they think, I got a sketch from him last year at the same convention and it wasn't even half of that.
Yeah.
And they start getting upset. Well, that artist has now, maybe he's doing a successful book. Mm-hmm. What don't put into perspective is maybe that artist for about 2 years had a day job, was drawing in the evening, was doing a book for Image, could have been doing a book for IDW, who knows, where they were literally getting $10 a page or nothing even. It's like, hey, you're going to get paid royalties off this. Oh, it's an Image book. Great. Thinking that Image meant, hey, I'm going to get a decent paycheck. And no, it's Images like royalties are completely across the spectrum. Like people seem to think that you get a book published by Image, that's it, you're made. It's not like that at all. So if you've done a couple of miniseries where you've not received a penny from them, I think one of the things you learn, and you look at the history of the way the industry creates comic creators. If you decide, right, okay, well, look, I'm going to try and make a bit of money now because I don't know when this is going to end. It could happen, it happens all the time. Like somebody's a hot artist and then next year he's been replaced by somebody else. But he wasn't around for long enough for you actually to remember who he was. it's, a lot of artists have, it's got into that thing of, I'm going to make some money now because I don't like, I've been surviving on gas fumes for the last, 5-10 years. And now it's my chance to actually, I can make a little bit of money. I can actually, hey, maybe I can move into a 2-bedroom place where I can have a studio finally. I'm not working in the kitchen. Maybe I've got a girlfriend. Maybe I've got a family. Maybe. Oh yeah, no, I mean, but it's that thing everyone has to face, is that you work for so little money for so long that when it starts to come home,
so
know that,
I get that. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, it's just I mean, it's difficult, but when you're doing like the work that's involved in producing 20, 22 pages a month by an artist, and particularly the level of detail now, like one of the things that I was involved, because I was actually representing some artists that were involved in the New 52.
Okay.
So I was up at DC on a regular basis, and when I started to see everything roll out for the New 52, my first thought was, when I saw all the new costume designs, my first thought was, who was the asshole who created these? It's going to create all of that ribbing and piping and glowing, like the
detail,
extra detail, Flash's costume that he never had before.
Oh, this armor.
Yeah, it's a massive headache for an artist.
That's Jim Lee stuck. Jim Lee stuck in the 90s.
Yeah. Dude, the only thing I enjoyed from New 52, real talk, was Swamp Thing, Animal Man, and Frankenstein.
Here you go. Excellent. And I enjoyed Just League Dark as well.
Yeah, that was good. That was JLD was really good too. Absolutely, I forgot that one. Yeah. But the Swamp Thing with the Animal Man, the red, the green, the rods. I mean, wow, such wonderful stuff that came out of that. I hope they bring that back in the current iteration, because they never really focused on it on that scale.
Yeah, Trevor Foreman was born to draw that book. Those first couple of issues were excellent.
This is why Chris works with Comic Crusader. He's really after my heart. I mean, we're on the same page.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, we can talk the New 52. That's an interesting topic.
Yeah, no one else wants to talk New 52, but there was a couple of good things. You can't deny
Absolutely.
that. I mean,
absolutely.
It happens. I mean, with every generation of books that come out, not everything's going to be 100. You know what I mean? There's going to be some great stuff. There's going to be some shitty stuff. There's going to be some mediocre stuff. It is what it is. You know what I mean? But obviously, to each their own at the end of the day. No?
I think what was groundbreaking with the New 52 was that many people do not realize that. But I'm not from the States. I'm from Germany. And for me, the moment comics went day and date, meaning I could buy a comic book immediately when it came out in the States on Comixology. Yeah. That came with the New 52, and that was groundbreaking.
And were you happy? Was that really the first time you were able to buy it that way? Really?
Yes. They even helped. There was some trouble with the retailers, I remember, and they made the decision to hold the books back 6 or 7 hours to give the stores time to open the stores. So they became available here in Germany in the afternoon.
That is just so. I'm sorry, because this is for me so crazy. At this day and age, I mean, you're in Germany. I mean, come on, man, this is one world. How can we not get you books on time? That it took this long?
Wow. It was in 2011, and they forced Marvel to follow suit.
Wow.
Who didn't want to do that. And what's so interesting, before that, I could read all these great previews on Newsarama and so on, where they were cool sites, and I saw, Ruben, Captain America. Okay, I can read that issue when it comes out in a trade 6 months later when it's available on Amazon. Those were the days back then.
You were always behind then.
Yes, and for me, I was really like, wow, now it's immediately available. It's the coolest thing ever.
Dave, is that the same in the UK? We release the books. I know the UK has its own labels, and I'm sure they come out on time. But is it the same thing? No,
the UK is actually pretty much like America because everything's always been in English. So
okay,
it was always usually if New Comic Day was Wednesday, so Britain had New Comics Day on Thursday. It took the extra day to ship over to the UK.
Oh, shit. So is that still current that your new comic book days Thursdays?
It's now Wednesday.
Oh, now you're down with us. Okay, great.
Yeah. but I think what's interesting, and because I've worked in the comic industry for so long on every single side of the business, so I've known, like, I used to have some very good friends that handled all the foreign rights for Marvel and DC. Mm-hmm. I would go to the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I'm hanging out with the people who sell the rights for Marvel and DC comics.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because you see, in America, you think of it, it's like, well, DC publishes DC Comics. That's the only place you're going to get a DC comic from. But you go to Europe, and in Spain, in France, in probably Germany as well, you might have as many as 3 or 4 different publishers publishing DC Comics.
No way. At the same time.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah,
interesting. True.
Really? Same for Germany then.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, DC were publishing too much, so no one publisher could take it all on.
Gotcha.
But then you'd have problems. Like, imagine you're in Spain, your biggest rival has got 20 titles by DC. You've got 20 titles by DC. Okay. They seem to be all contained. And then, of course, the next year there's a big crossover. And now what you have, because
oh my God,
published at the same time, you have to collaborate. You have to sit down at the table with your competitors to work out, well, when are you going to publish the first part of that story? Because we've got the second part of the story.
Are you serious? Oh my God!
That's crazy. And also, what's different? Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, imagine there's a part of the story that no one has actually optioned to publish. So, it happens. So someone has to, like, oh well, we'll reprint, we'll have a double-sized issue of this book because it's got these other characters in, and we'll put that in the back.
So oh my God! Are you serious? I'm so sorry you guys got to go through this shit. Oh my God!
It's also the different formats because in Germany, for example, we don't like single issues, so the books would come out in trades, basically with 5 or 6 issues lumped together.
Why are you single issue racists in Germany for?
I don't know.
I love it.
We like books. We are book country. We like books. That's obviously the reason.
Who needs a goddamn floppy? Give me a fucking book. This is all I keep hearing now. That's it. The new Germany, books, no floppies.
Yeah, that's interesting, huh? But it's all digital now. It's basically all digital now. What's so interesting was some years back, you could buy the Comixology books in the apps, and you pay in your local currency. You pay in dollar, and basically you could see who bought what from which country. They published that, and it was interesting to see what book was leading in what market. That was quite interesting. They published that on their website. That was interesting.
What was the weirdest? So, what was the weirdest rate you ever saw? Like, really, this book? Have you ever said that?
I can't recall, but there was a book which was very, very odd, that was very popular in China, which was very strange, because China seems to have their own particular tastes, but it's quite interesting.
Well, here's an interesting fact, and it goes back. This is going back to 1990, and then I'm going to talk about Mad Magazine. So.
I loved Mad back then. In the late 80s to early 90s, I loved it. That was when I collected it.
Yeah. I mean, so Bill Gaines ran Mad Magazine, but it was distributed by Warner Brothers. And his deal was he had a contract with Warner Brothers that said that on his death, Warner Brothers would take the title.
Ooh.
And And it happened. And it happened.
Yeah. But up until the point, so when Bill Gaines had the rights, when it was his magazine to control, he had the right idea. And it was this. He knew that the value to Mad was the brand itself, not necessarily the content.
Yeah.
And obviously the content was great, but he knew that he was doing humor, and humor didn't necessarily translate to every language. It's everyone's.
It didn't fly to everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I met him in 1990 because I was in talks with him to take over the rights for the UK for Mad Magazine. And so we were having this conversation, and this is when he tells me everything, because he's like, yeah, it's every single country that Mad Magazine's in. The deal is that on the first year you have the agreement, you have to use at least 60% of his magazine. The second year, you cut that down. That can be like 40 or 50% of the magazine. But the idea is within 5 years, your Mad Magazine is literally like you're using their logo, and you're under no obligation at all to use anything of the American material. You can just use homegrown material, but you're benefiting from
Interesting.
But you're benefiting from the fact that there's this global brand. Mad Magazine at that time was a global brand, and every country you went to, their Mad Magazine was different.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now you're gonna make me go ahead and start looking for this on eBay to see a certain issue and see how different each issue is. That's very interesting, dude. I love that.
But when Bill Gaines died and Warner Brothers took it in and gave it to DC Comics to look after, they immediately canceled all their contracts. So anybody, as your contract came up around the rest of the world, your contract ended and you lost Mad Magazine. And if you wanted Mad Magazine, you could only use American material. And because of that, the Mad brand died in the world, around the world.
Interesting.
So that was a slowdown, because I'll tell you, I was a big fan again in the late 80s to early 90s. That shit used to make me crack up all the time. It was a fun magazine. But then, as I got older, I would see it less and less. So now, with you saying what you said, I understand. Yeah, I get it now. Take some shit, right? As you get older, you get to understand shit, right?
That's true. Very true.
Yeah. But it just shows you that
it makes sense.
You see, here's this person who, like, he and his team created the magazine and he ran it and he knew the formula.
So are you saying that if I die, hopefully it won't be for a long time, but Comic Crusader just won't be the same, right?
No, we'll just reboot you. We'll get Rob Liefeld in to redesign you.
Oh my God, man! He can't draw feet, and I'm gonna be full of pouches. This is gonna be horrible.
But you will be wearing a 90s costume, huh?
Oh yes.
I wouldn't mind the 90s costume, so I'm a 90s kid. Hey, you know what I mean? But hey, I don't mind it. I mean, Chris was in his late 20s around the 90s, right?
That's true. Yeah.
You were Mac, and you were a young man doing your thing with the pouches.
Yeah, sure. We all did.
Dave, was pouches big in the UK back in the 90s?
Well, Image had its time everywhere. I was not quite into pouches. I was kind of already at that where I was beginning to tire of Marvel and DC comics, and a bunch of comics that were ripping them off, but not as well written, just didn't really do much for me. I wish them all the best. I really like the idea of creators taking these, like, stick it to the man.
Let me ask you then, I mean, that was a revolutionary time. This goes to Chris too. What do you guys feel? That was a revolutionary time. There are these, rock stars at the time. Comic artists reach a level of popularity that hadn't been seen before at that time. So, who do you think was probably and still is the most effective person that came out of that? Because I know in Toy Fair, I'll tell you, I met Todd McFarlane. Somebody told me, people told me horror stories. I don't know about that because I saw him. I said, Todd, I love Spawn. I've been collecting since day one at the comic shop. So thank you for creating one of my favorite characters. I went to shake his hand. He slaps my hand and gives me a hug. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw the picture. Great, huh?
You know what I mean? Yeah. He was awesome.
Fantastic.
We talked about toys. We talked the comics, and he gave me some entrepreneurial advice. You know, and this is coming from the man. People told me, we've had bad experiences with him. Not me. He was awesome. I don't know about that. But I respect how he did things. I mean, he kept telling me. He kept saying, every time I think I'm about to retire or just step away, a new challenge comes up my way, and I can't help but take the challenge.
Cool.
Well,
he's working
with DC now. He's going to actually
toys. My dude, 22 points of articulation on toys. How awesome is that? I never had a toy that posed that much. I wish. And you know what? I'm going to feel like a kid again when those come out because I will buy them.
Excellent.
And take them out the box. And then, Chris, if you ever want to visit Massachusetts or Rhode Island, you can come over and we can play with our figures and record it.
That sounds excellent. Thanks for the invite.
And Dave too, man. Definitely.
Excellent.
Look up in New York or something. I go visit family. Let's do it. That's how I met Dave. I met Dave on Twitter too, promoting a lot of his goodies, and unfortunately, I had just moved to Massachusetts when he did a Forbidden Planet signing. He was like, "Come on over, let's get some beers." I wish I just moved. You're like, why did you wait a month later till I moved, you bastard? It would have been fun to hang out with Mr. Elliott. Because Chris, please listen to our old interview with Dave because he's talking about going to a pub. And he's hanging, Neil Gaiman and all these a bunch of British creators. And I'm like, me and my boys are just feeling jealous. Like, oh my God, that's all it takes is a couple of beers and you're chilling with these world-class writers.
Well, no, but you see, we were talking about a very different time when, and this was before Alan was working on Swamp Thing, and everyone would go. We'd have these little comic conventions. They were,
Isn't it comic marts for you guys? Not
comic marts. That's what they were. It wasn't really a convention. There's no panels. It was just
you just buying books.
Yeah, and so you didn't have to pay to get in. You just go in. You buy your comics.
Really? Even the most low budget convention here still charges $2.
Yeah, no, these were like literally. I think they charged eventually, but at the time, it was they had these venues where everyone the vendors would pay for a table, and that paid for the rent of the place. No one was about. See, the thing is, there was a lot of love, so it wasn't really about like trying to gouge anyone or anything. It was just about let's just do this. Let's try and spread the love. Let's just we'll charge you just enough so that we can cover our costs and make a little bit more, a little bit. But we want to allow people to come in, and the more people come in, the more comics get bought. It's if I'm like when I was a kid, when I first started finding my first comic marts, it was I used to cycle everywhere because if I took the train or anything, I would calculate how many comics that I couldn't buy because I'd taken public transport. So
we were taking the trains to New York. We hit the con, and luckily I was working. I made sure that I could. I'm not going to ask my parents for money back then for the books, so they were not going to give me that for that. You know what I mean? So whatever dough I did collect, man, it all went to books. I had a shop called Grand Book Center. I was buying packs of comics for $1, 5 books at a time, and this is why I'm such a horror freak. Those packs would always come with a Chamber of Chills or a Crypt of Horror or something.
Right.
And then, a Marvel team up, an Avengers, an X-Men. I mean, I was hooked. A Justice League. I miss those days. And the cons back then were so much fun. They were $5, so cheap to go in. and you were buying books galore for a quarter. I mean, I remember a few years before moving, I went to a convention across the street from Madison Square Garden, the Penn Plaza convention, and my boy 13 Crusader Mike, right? Yeah. He went, and there's a particular vendor we always used to love talking to. Very knowledgeable. Is a Jewish guy and a Puerto Rican guy, and but the thing is that they also sold all their books for 50 cents. Would you believe that one day Mike walked out with 2 long boxes of comics that we had to buy a hand truck and get a taxi home because he went ballistic. But the thing is that the stuff he bought, guys, you're not gonna find that for 50 cents nowadays. Shoot. You understand me? I mean, you are finding gems by Thomas, by Kirby, Lee, Paro, Perez. I mean, books galore from DC, Marvel, even the independent. I'm more of an indie guy, so I would look for my indie gems. At a convention where I found my Nexus #1 first appearance. You know what I mean? Oversized, and then I found the whole series. Issue 3 comes with a damn record.
But see, isn't that it? See, it's interesting because I look at, people keep forgetting the pocket of time people were in when they first got into comics and the accessibility to comics.
Yes,
like being able to come away from a convention with a whole long box of comics that you've only been paying 50 cents each for.
Dave, like 2 weeks prior to moving to Massachusetts, I went to a convention in New York in some hotel around 57th Street. I bought 100 issues of the Hulk Buscema and whoever else was on those books. So, I mean, like 100 issues at a quarter a pop. Yeah. 25 fucking bucks for 100 issues of the Hulk from the 70s, 80s era.
Amazing. But don't forget, you've also got, like, I hate to say this, but there's also that thing of you never know that the guy who's selling the comics has got to that point where it's like, I have to make some money, and I know these comics are worth more, and I'm just going to sell them at this because I need to sell them.
Absolutely. And I'm not one to be like, oh, what you're selling me. I don't do that. I don't do that. I buy it. And I'm a happy person inside.
Yeah, I've got a storage unit. I've got warehouse space or whatever it is. I got to clear it out. I can't afford to rent that anymore. I've got comics in that. And you've got gems in there. You've got some bloody amazing gems in it. But at the same time, you've also got a lot of crap. And so if you just, a whole lot, 25 cents each.
Listen, guys, in New York, right? When I first started Comic Crusaders, I wanted to be a shop, right? Economic times came, and thanks to my beautiful wife, she gave me a different idea. And this is why Comic Crusaders is the way it is nowadays. It's because of her. However, when I was thinking of doing a shop, I met a dude in New York, and I was buying comic books at 10 cents a pop, but it has to be bulk. Do you know that he had 2 copies of the first Harley in that box that he gave me?
Shoot.
That itself made up for my cost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But obviously, because to make the business survive, I just sold them. I'm not one of those. I'm sentimental to certain things. Like I want to collect my Swamp Things OG. I want to collect my Conan's OG. And so long as I have the first appearance of White Tiger, first Puerto Rican hero in comics, apparently, I'm a happy man. I could sell everything else and not even worry about it.
Right.
So long as I read it first, because I love reading my books. And Spawn, I'll never sell either. I'm an asshole that way. You laugh. I've had people offer me up to $2,000 to buy all my Spawns. I'm like, no.
No, you don't sell them.
No, that's my shit. I love it. I've been doing it since day one. Absolutely not.
I think in my long box, I've just got like the first 10 issues and like 2 of each of them.
Oh, nice. Oh, you were one of those 90s buyers that buy 2 of everything. One for me and one to sell.
No, because those particular ones, they're mine, but my brother brought them as well. So basically he gave me both my copy and his copy.
Well, if you don't want his collection, you can send it to the Comic Crusaders Fund.
As long as you pay shipping.
Oh shit! Hey man, hell yeah, absolutely. All right. So we've been going on for and let's see. Right now it says an hour, but let's ask a couple of just a closing question here, because I really want to continue this conversation and get more into the talk, to get into the business side and the more the collectability side and the history side. This has been nice to get into know our personalities. I think you and Chris are absolutely awesome. And if you guys are down, I would like to do this shit once a month with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you down, Dave?
Yeah. No, I think because I think what's great is we all have a love for a lot of the same material, but we're all coming at it from 3 different countries.
Absolutely. Different perspective, different shipping dates, different views. Because I don't know how you guys see it. Because, for example, 13 Crusader, I think actually Chris also shared them. The Spain versions of a George Perez story out of Spider-Man with a Gwen kind of different ending. I'm like, what's going on here? Different stories. I mean, there's so much value in stories to be added from where we come from. Absolutely. I mean, that diversity in itself is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it was just the things where, because even the little things like I really got into Marvel when Marvel actually did a reprint black and white comic here in the UK.
I love black and white books, bro. This is what got me. This is why I love Savage, sort of Conan so much. And when Chris started sharing that stuff, all he made me do is start making my list a lot longer. So thank you, Chris, for emptying my bank account just a little bit more.
I loved those as a boy.
Yeah, listen, my mother was buying me this book at 9 years old. At 9 years old, I shouldn't be reading Savage Sword of Conan at that age, but I was. This is why to this day I got every Dark Horse issue. I got the first, issue for Marvel. I got the first Red Sonja. I got the Death of Elliott, and now I really want to pursue in collecting the whole run. And there are several stories in the Marvel U that, it's going to break the bank, but it's going to take me a while. But I think I could accomplish it.
I still remember reading those in the 80s, and I think there's there has been an omnibus of the first issues, isn't there?
Yes. Marvel did a omnibus that just came out recently, okay? But there's also, Dark Horse came out with a whole graphic novel, black and white, collection that collects up to about 10, 15 issues per book. So if you do that, I mean, I was very lucky to find the first volume in North Carolina. And if I look it up now, that book is easily going for $60. I'm like, really? And I pay cover price.
So
thank you, those shops that still, care about the fan and give cover prices, because my shop, Rubber Chicken Comics, I'll call it out. They'll sell me a variant or a special issue at cover price. They don't care because they understand that I'm a fan. I don't know about your local shops if they do that. And if they don't, tell them to hit me up and I'll make sure to take care of you.
See, it's funny because I actually think that something like Conan is perfect for a 9-year-old to read.
Oh, really? I mean, not the Savage Sword. I mean, you had titties and ass all over the place. If you're looking up, if you're talking about the current iteration that just came out, and I just read the first issue, yes. But if you're talking about that old black and white run, it was very mature for the time. But you know what? It didn't matter. It was great content. I mean, we're talking Robert E. Howard, his stories. Come on, man.
Well, I'll tell you, it's like, see, in the UK, we were brought up on a lot of different genre material. Like, superheroes was a slow thing to take off.
Yeah, apparently, I see, because my brother is all into UK comics. He likes the Robo Man or something like that. The Robot Hunter. There you go. He loves that. He loves that character, dude. That's his joint, and that's a UK book.
2000 AD. Yeah, it's all out of 2000 AD. But even before that, way before that, like, when I first started reading comics, all our comics were weekly. I can't remember if there was a monthly comic at all that was published in the UK. Everything was weekly.
Yeah, that'll break the bank.
But it didn't, because the thing is, it was like our comics were even cheaper than the American comics.
Oh, really?
And,
nice. Okay.
Yeah, and again, remember that time of I mean, like I was probably buying maybe 3 or 4 weekly comics at any one time.
How much was the weekly comic?
The cost-wise was probably, it was what they call sixpence at the time.
So what's sixpence? Because I have a 20 pence X-Men comic.
It's about the equivalent of a 12 cents comic. 10,
you know,
12
I have
cents.
Uncanny X-Men number 95, but I got the UK version.
Oh, that was probably 10p or 12p.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, is this the same?
Yeah. No. We paid them in D-Mark back in the day, and that was basically a little bit more expensive then.
So what is it if you want to kind of compare it to American dollars for our American listeners that don't want to Google it?
Wow, basically the 70s. In the 70s, the Marvel books, which came 30 pages, because they had one full issue and half an issue as a backup. They split the books because there were no ads. In German editions, there are no ads, and basically they had one mark 30 as a cover price when I was reading them in the 70s, which was basically, what is that, 60, 70 cents, basically around that.
All right, it's average for the time, right? Actually, no, I went 60s, 70s in America was like 30 to 40 cents a book.
Yeah, you got a
60 cents was the 80s.
Yeah, but you got 1.5 books basically, because you had no ads, you had the full story, and they split. What they were doing was basically they had the Fantastic Four, and as a backup, they split the Daredevil issues. So
what a bunch of bastards! So they make sure they hooked you.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, Dave, is it the same experience in the UK? Were they hooking you the same way?
Well, I was saying I really got into Marvel with when Marvel they set up a UK company. And The Mighty World of Marvel was a weekly comic, and it had Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and Hulk.
Wait. So you have a specific book called The Mighty World of Marvel?
Yep.
Holy shit. Word? That's awesome. So was it magazine size or was it a standard American comic size?
No, it was a magazine size. It was
okay.
But it was mostly black and white. Occasionally they would put two color. So, like on the Hulk, it would be green and black, like ink.
Right.
Everything, that was the only colors they used. And on Spider-Man, it was red and white, red and black. And so, Fantastic Four was blue and black. But they started off from the very first issues. And because the British comics were 48 pages, so you had half of the first issue of Fantastic Four, half the first issue of Spider-Man, or it was Amazing Fantasy, and the first Hulk story. But because at that time Marvel would have like 2 stories in every issue,
complete stories.
Yeah, because like you go back Fantastic Four number 1.
Holy shit, Chris, they cheese you, man. You get 1.5, and he was getting 2. Look at that.
Yeah, but basically it was cheaper, I think, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it was, but. That's what got me into Marvel comics. I'd seen bits and pieces of them before, but it was much easier up until that point. It was much easier to get DC comics.
Wow, man, you guys are blowing my mind because obviously my collecting experience is so much different. I get the floppies one at a time and I'm done. But here you're getting 2 full issues and I'm mad. Chris is getting 1.5. I mean, our collecting experience is so different. Wow.
But it's different. But like, my first real exposure to American comics was there was a couple of different British publishers in the 50s and 60s who would reprint all the horror, science fiction, monster stories from American comics. And back then, a publisher would sell rights, and they didn't care if the comic in like the British comic would have material from 3 different publishers in it. They didn't care. They just what they did was, and this is very interesting, and this goes into the sort of like the technical side of publishing and printing. So up until like probably the late 1960s. When the comics were printed, they were printing on heavy metal plates. And they switched later on to aluminium and lighter things, even to plastic plates. And then they did away with plates completely. But these plates were so well made that, say, like a British publisher would say, okay, well, we want the rights to these comics. They would buy the printing plates. And the deal was that they could keep reprinting the material until the plates wore out.
Until they wore out.
Yeah. So see, this is the thing. Like, I was raised on comics where there wasn't this thing about, like,
that's crazy.
So much going on every month, and this comic is tied into this comic, and this is tied into this, and you have to buy this one because this is tied into this. It was all these self-contained comics, and particularly anthologies. So, and every 5 to 6 years, they would reprint everything again because they just kept all the plates in the warehouse. But every time they printed, the quality would go down a little bit. And they were printing up until the mid 70s. And by that point, the plates were really bad. I mean, you could almost probably read it. And then they had to stop because the plates were no good anymore. And they didn't have the rights to carry on printing because their deal was just for as long as the plates lasted. So they made a lot of money. Really? Yeah, so they didn't have to pay royalties. They bought the plates. The plates was it. The publisher made money because they sold the plates for a certain amount of money. They were like, great, we sold them. That's great.
So can they resell the plates, or they're wasted to the point that it's just not worth reprinting anymore?
Oh, they're just wasted. I mean, they're just completely.
That's done.
Yeah.
All right. So okay, Chris. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But they print the same material like 5 or 6 times, and not have to pay any royalties for it because they owned the plates now, so they could carry on printing. But they only had the rights for those plates, not the actual material.
Only that. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But I was raised on that. But it was all in black and white because they only bought the black plate. They didn't buy the other plates, so they're just in black and white. So
gotcha.
we would see all this material in black and white.
Listen, man, I went to my comic shop and I was looking at my black and white material from those Sarasota Conans he had. And he's going to have a sale at the end of the month. So I said, I'll be back for these. Let's see what happens. But with that, let's just close this out because we've been over an hour. Okay. And I want our fans to come back and listen to the rest of this conversation because we're going to do it again. Because we're going to have to continue on this. Because Dave and Chris are both a wealth of comic book information unbeknownst to you guys. Who the hell needs a goddamn encyclopedia when you got these two guys in your life? Honestly.
Oh, thank you.
So, with that, this is Al Mega. This is Chris. You can follow what's your Twitter handle, Chris?
That's Chris _ Buse, BUSE.
There you go. And Dave, where can our fans find you?
On Twitter, Dave Elliott. That's DEEVELLIOTT. But if you find Chris, you'll find me commenting underneath and liking it.
That's true. We work as a team.
And what about the label? Where can people look at the books?
Well, if you go to Facebook and look for Atomic Art, which is ATOMEKART.
Awesome. There you go, folks. So I'm Al Mega with Dave, with Chris. We're going to be back because we're going to keep talking, man. I mean, these guys are a wealth of knowledge like you wouldn't believe. And there's a lot of stuff we got to still touch on, especially from the published perspective, from the collective perspective, and Omega's perspective, because I'm crazy sometimes. With that, this is UCPN, Omega, and I'm out. Later. This is an Undercover Capes production. Thank you for listening. Make sure to visit comiccrusaders.com, undercovercapes.com, geekerymagazine.com, and our newest venture, splinteredpress.com.